What's up everybody, I'm Mad.Ak.Max and welcome to my channel and yet another little Let's Craft. Today we're going to make some Fakelite mags. Everybody that is a little bit into guns has probably seen an AK with one of those iconic orange mags. And these magazines are made from Fakelite. Well, they're not made from Fakelite. It is something else that is called Fakelite, but it's not actual Fakelite. Whatever, we are going to make Fakelite magazines. This tutorial or Let's Craft will be interesting for real steel shooters as well as for airsofters. And why are we going to make some Fakelite mags in the first place? Well, you have probably heard about that little war that Russia started and is losing hilariously. Of course, there are also some other Fakelite mags available, especially from countries like Poland or Czechoslovakia. But usually those are not the original Izhevsk, Izhmash, or Tula AK magazines. So with the war going on and sanctions and some seriously retarded gun laws, especially if you are living in Europe or California, for example, it is extremely difficult to get your hands on new magazines or import them, or it's even impossible, like in my case. I would love to show you some original Fakelite magazines, but sadly I don't have any because I am located in the United European Union. I am located in the EU and recently we had a new law that prohibits magazines with a capacity above 10 for semi-automatic rifles, of course. What is possible though is that you basically buy deactivated mag shells, so you grind down the feed lips and make it pretty much unusable for any gun. Then you can import them, is my plan. Sooner or later I will pretty much transfer these magazine shells into airsoft mags. But this is not today's task. I will show you how to make Fakelite. Pretty much recreate the Fakelite magazine lock as close as possible with my own recipe. But I don't want to spoil too much at the beginning of the video. I will show you the results at the very end. Don't skip. Alrighty, in my case I'm going to use the classic GHK mag shells. Those come very close to the original Fakelite mags and don't have these little strengthening ribs on the side. I was thinking on how I could make the magazines look even better, and I decided to add the little manufacturer emblems and letters that are stamped on the original mags. The Tula magazines, for example, have a little star, and the Izhmash mags have the triangle with an arrow in the middle. I went for the Izhmash ones and designed these symbols in Blender and printed them with my resin printer. Resin printers are absolutely awesome because they are incredibly accurate, but the overall working flow is way more of a hassle, as you can tell. After the print finished, you scrape the parts of the plate, wash them in rubbing alcohol and finally harden them under UV light. Of course I will release the files from my Patreons. This will give your mags the final touch. You can find the link down in the description below. You can see that I attempted two different kinds of prints. The first is just the raw piece and the second has pretty much a back plate. This should help if your printer is not that accurate, and further, if you don't want to struggle with every single letter, well, this is the way to go. I did the same with the Izhmash logo later. I prepare the surface of the magazines by sanding them with 200 grit sandpaper. This will help the paint to stick much better. After sanding, I wash them with water and give it a quick wipe with rubbing alcohol. I have to mention that this video is the result of like 5 different tries and takes, so don't wonder if the magazine suddenly looks slightly different. You see what I mean. On my first try I used an Izhmash logo with a back plate. Later I went for a separate triangle and arrow. I simply applied the printed parts with a little bit of super glue. I found it helpful to use a needle. Basically, I apply a little drop under and around the parts. It helps if you use the very liquid type of cyanoacrylite. Now I'm going to paint the magazines. For that I will use two different kinds of orange. a rust-like and a more vibrant one. Make sure that you go for matte colors, by the way. If you mix the two colors, you create much more depth to the 3D effect, like on an actual Fakelite magazine. Time for magic powders, and I'm not talking about cocaine. Well, maybe. If it helps you, who am I to judge? But in my case, I will just use a spirit stain, which is extremely fine powder. The pigments dissolve in rubbing alcohol, and because it's so fine, make sure to use a mask and gloves. The idea behind the spirit stain is that the pigments don't change much of color after they dried. I found that the classic wood stain method always dulled a lot after drying and lost much of its visual depth. I just mixed the color by feeling and went for a light orange and then for a reddish brown. Be aware that the rubbing alcohol will dissolve the base color. This makes this method quite a bit more challenging, because if you use too much or too much force, you will remove the orange paint as well. The brush strokes combined with the alcohol will fuse the pigments and different paint layers in a beautiful way. Sadly, I lost the footage of the first layer of orange spirit stain. That is why it already has a pattern in this shot. Just make sure that you use light and irregular brush strokes. Now after everything dried up, well, you can really see the beauty of my take. Well, but we're not done yet. I apply a matte clear coat. This is crucial for the next part. The other big problem I had with the classical method is, well, it's paint. That can scratch easily or flake off, especially on gun magazines that see use and abuse. This is why I apply now a layer of clear epoxy. This completely seals the mag and makes it way more robust. Further, if you take a closer look at actual Fakelite mags, they have that 3D brush stroke surface, which we will recreate with epoxy as well. The epoxy tends to run back into a detail-less surface, so make sure to go over it with a brush every few minutes. I used epoxy that settled within 30 minutes. Now to give it a final touch, I designed some inspection stamps you find on most Ishmash and Tula mags. These are available for my Patreons as well. As I said before, you can find the link to my Patreon down in the description below. It helps a lot. And here is the final result. So, here it is, and I am absolutely satisfied. It looks fantastic. The only thing that I might want to change in the future is just give it one more layer of matte clear coat to get rid a little bit of that gloss, or at least a little bit more. And then I'm at a point where I'd say, well, this is pretty damn perfect. If you want to support me further, you can do so on Patreon. I will upload the emblems and the stamps over there. Finally, make sure to check out my Instagram. I upload a lot of stuff there as well. I am sorry that this video took a little bit longer, but currently I am working on a few grozers actually. And yeah, that is a project that eats up a lot of my time. And if I try to make something besides that, it takes a little bit longer. I hope you can understand that. With that being said, have a nice one. Bye.